Welcome to this explainer. Look, we're about to go on a seriously high-speed, fascinating tour of your very own body. I really want you to completely reframe how you think about yourself right now. Stop thinking of your body as just you. Think of it as an incredibly advanced, non-stop factory. Literally, every single cell is a microscopic workstation, and they're constantly demanding a fresh supply of energy. So today we're going to decode exactly how this biological masterpiece actually operates to keep you alive and moving.
It all really comes down to this one central mystery. How in the world does a single bite of your favorite food, mixed with just a simple breath of invisible air, actually manage to power a trillion-cell empire? Honestly, it's so easy to take for granted, but the way these raw materials and oxygen combine to keep our internal machinery running, without us even having to think about it, well, it's nothing short of miraculous.
So here's the quick roadmap for our factory tour. 1. Digestion, our processing plant. 2. Respiration, the combustion chamber. 3. Breathing, how we take in oxygen. And 4. Circulation, the central pump.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Digestion, breaking it down.
This is the stage where we dismantle raw materials, physically and chemically, so they can actually reach every single cell in your body. Let's trace the physical path of your food. Obviously, it all starts in the mouth, right? Mechanical chewing is absolutely critical here because it increases the surface area of what you're eating. That lets an enzyme called salivary amylase get right to work, chemically breaking down those carbohydrates. Once it's all chewed up, we call it a bolus. That bolus travels down a 25-centimeter pipe called the esophagus. Now, it doesn't just fall down thanks to gravity, it's actively pushed by these rhythmic, wave-like muscle contractions called peristalsis. Next, it drops straight into the stomach, which is basically a biological mixing machine. The stomach walls vigorously churn everything together until that bolus turns into an acidic, fluid-like paste called chyme. Then it heads right over to the small intestine for final absorption.
And this perfectly illustrates the ultimate goal of our entire processing plant. I mean, we can't exactly absorb a whole sandwich, right? The factory has to dismantle complex macronutrients down into their absolute smallest, most absorbable units. So carbohydrates, they're broken all the way down into glucose. Proteins get dismantled step by step into amino acids. And fats, well, they're broken apart into fatty acids and glycerol. It's only when they reach these tiny microscopic forms that they can actually enter your bloodstream. This is exactly why eating simple carbs gives you that quick glucose spike, while complex proteins take way longer to dismantle, which keeps your factory fueled and you feeling full for a lot longer.
Now think about the numbers 1.5 to 3.5. That is the pH level of the hydrochloric acid, or HCl, sloshing around inside your stomach. It is insanely acidic. In fact, it's corrosive enough to act as your body's brilliant first line of defense, literally killing off harmful bacteria on your food before they can infect the rest of the factory. But here's the really cool part. This intense acid also wakes up a sleeping enzyme called pepsinogen. It converts it into active pepsin, which is what allows your body to finally start digesting those tough, complex proteins.
Okay, so once that highly acidic chyme hits the small intestine, it needs to be neutralized and absorbed. The small intestine is basically your master absorption center, and it gets a ton of help through some massive biological teamwork. The pancreas sends in an enzyme called trypsin along with alkaline bicarbonate just to neutralize that intense stomach acid. Meanwhile, your liver, which is the body's largest gland, by the way, produces bile to emulsify or basically break apart the fats. This bile is carefully stored in the gallbladder until a hormone called CCK gives it the green light to release. And finally, the walls of the small intestine itself are lined with these microscopic finger-like projections called villi. These villi massively increase the surface area so all those perfectly broken down nutrients can sweep directly into your bloodstream.
Any leftover material that didn't get absorbed heads straight to the large intestine. You can think of this as the factory's waste management department. Your body really doesn't want to lose anything valuable, so the large intestine scavenges and absorbs any remaining water and minerals. But what's absolutely wild is that it is packed with good, symbiotic bacteria. These little internal chefs actually synthesize essential vitamins for us, specifically vitamin K and a bunch of B vitamins, straight out of our waste. Talk about brilliant biological recycling.
Moving right along to Section 2, Respiration, the energy spark. So now that our raw materials are safely in the blood, we transition away from the digestive plant and move into the combustion chambers inside your cells. Every single cell has a VIP chamber known as the mitochondria, which you've probably heard called the powerhouse of the cell. This right here is where a molecule called ATP is produced. ATP is the ultimate energy currency that our biological factory constantly demands to function. Seriously, whenever your body needs energy, whether you're blinking your eyes, solving a math problem, or running a full marathon, you are spending ATP.
But here's the big question. We know we've successfully delivered glucose to the cell, but how does that digested food actually transform into this magical energy currency? Well, this is where the real magic of biology happens.
Just think about the stark difference in energy production for a second. When oxygen is present, your cells undergo aerobic respiration. That means glucose is completely broken down inside the mitochondria, which yields a massive payload of 36 to 38 ATP molecules for every single glucose molecule. It is ridiculously efficient. But what happens if you're sprinting as fast as you can and your body just can't bring in oxygen fast enough? The factory hits the panic button and goes into an emergency state called anaerobic respiration. Without oxygen, that same glucose only yields a pretty pathetic 2 ATP. Plus, it leaves behind a nasty byproduct called lactic acid. And that right there is exactly why your muscles start burning and cramping up when you push a workout a bit too hard.
Which brings us to Section 3, breathing, taking in oxygen.
Since oxygen is so clearly the secret to getting that massive energy payload, let's look at exactly how we get it into the factory. Let's follow a quick breath of air. First, it enters the pharynx. Crucially, you have this tiny little flop called the epiglottis. It completely covers your windpipe when you swallow food so you don't choke, but it snaps open instantly to let air through. The air then travels rapidly down your trachea or windpipe. And this is just a beautiful piece of nature's engineering. The trachea actually has sturdy rings of cartilage all around it so it doesn't collapse under the pressure of your breathing. Finally, the air splits off into the bronchioles, eventually reaching these tiny, microscopic air sacs called alveoli.
The absolute most crucial part of this whole process happens right inside those alveoli. Get this, if you were to take all the alveoli in an average adult human's lungs and lay them out totally flat, they would cover 70 to 80 square meters. That is literally the size of a tennis court packed neatly inside your chest. This incredibly massive surface area is 100% dedicated to exchanging that vital oxygen directly into your bloodstream.
But here's a wild fact. Your lungs don't actually pull in this air all by themselves. They're essentially just passive bags. The real work is done right below your lungs by a sheet of muscle called the diaphragm. Actually, take a deep breath with me right now. As you do that, your diaphragm contracts and physically pulls downward. This expands the volume inside your chest cavity. And as we know from basic physics, when volume increases, pressure drops. So the air pressure inside your lungs suddenly becomes lower than the air pressure outside your body, and air simply rushes in to fill the vacuum.
All right, so once the oxygen is in the lungs, we have to load it onto the transport trucks. In your bloodstream, that truck is a truly remarkable protein called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is basically a smart transport truck because it carries completely different types of cargo on different parts of its structure. Oxygen binds very specifically to the heme part, which is the part that contains iron. Meanwhile, the waste gas, carbon dioxide, binds to the globin part. So they don't even have to fight for the same seat on the truck.
Let's break down how the factory actually takes out that CO2 trash. While 23% of carbon dioxide rides on the hemoglobin truck we just talked about, the vast majority of it, an incredible 70%, is actually converted into bicarbonate ions. These ions just travel directly within the blood plasma, and a tiny little 7% just dissolves straight into the plasma itself.
Now, we definitely need to talk about a major red flag here, and that is the effect of carbon monoxide, a gas you'll find in cigarette smoke and car exhaust. Carbon monoxide is essentially a toxic hijacker. It actually has a 200 times stronger affinity for hemoglobin than oxygen does. So if carbon monoxide enters your lungs, it forcefully kicks oxygen right out of those truck seats and permanently latches on. The hemoglobin trucks are still driving around your body, but they aren't delivering any oxygen, which is literally suffocating your energy factory from the inside out.
Okay, let's wrap things up with Section 4. Circulation, the central pump.
We've successfully processed the raw food, and we've gathered the necessary oxygen. Now we just need to look at the central pump that connects this entire logistics network. Your heart has 4 chambers and operates on what's called double circulation. This just means blood passes through the heart twice for every full cycle. First, the right side pumps deoxygenated blood over to the lungs to pick up fresh oxygen. That's your pulmonary loop.
Then, that freshly oxygenated blood returns to the left side of the heart, which powerfully pumps it out to the rest of the body. That's the systemic loop. And just to make sure blood only ever flows in one direction, your heart is fitted with literal swinging doors called the bicuspid and tricuspid valves. When you hear your heartbeat, that famous lub-dub sound, that isn't actually the heart muscle flexing. It's the physical sound of those internal doors forcefully slamming shut.
But what actually tells the heart to beat in the first place? Crazy enough, it doesn't wait around for a signal from your brain. The heart has its very own built-in spark plug called the SA node, or sinoatrial node. It literally generates its own electrical impulses to set the relentless, driving rhythm of the factory. It's your body's natural biological pacemaker, strictly ensuring that the central pump never, ever stops.
Just take a second and really think about everything we've covered today. Your digestive system is actively dismantling complex structures on a microscopic level. Your respiratory system is pulling off highly precise gas exchanges across a tennis court-sized surface hidden inside your chest. And your heart is generating its own electricity to pump life-giving fuel to 1 trillion individual cells. Your body perfectly coordinates food, oxygen, and electricity millions of times a single day, and it does it all without you even asking it to. The engineering here is just flawless. So the only question left for you is, what will you power with your factory today? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.